Anyways, we're trying to draw nearer to God, right? I mean, that's really our goal. That's my goal. I've been a Christian for 28 years now, which some of you are like, 28 years? I've been a Christian for however many. But that for me is a long time, right? So I'm only 48 years. I became a Christian at 19 years old. I'm going to be 48 years old soon. And so some of you think I'm still just a little guy, whatever, but yeah, our dear brother in the back, 81 years old, right? God bless you, man. That's wonderful. You're looking really good for 81. You've been a Christian for 45 years? Wonderful. Almost as long as I've been around. So that's good news, man. Yeah. I was 3 years old when you became a Christian. That's wonderful. And drawing near to God is as a result of drawing near to Christ, because Christ leads us where? To the Father. When ye pray, say, Our Father. There's no other name given among men whereby we must be saved. And what do? You come to him and he leads you to God. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. And so I love the subject of God and his Son. It's exciting to me. And so, looking now at this idea of drawing closer to God, we're going to try to understand a little bit more of what's being said here. Adam killed the first animal. Why? Because he was drawing nearer to Christ. Now, think about that for a second. What was it like for Adam to kill an animal? Was that something like he was, right on, I'm going to fulfill the gospel? Oh, no. We're told in Patriarchs and Prophets, I don't remember the page, 68, I think. But it's pretty clear he was not happy as a result of killing that lamb. In fact, he had to understand that by his own choices, with his own hand, he was reflecting the killing of the Son of God. If you can try to get into that emotion, which I can't, I don't know how. The reason why I don't know how to get into that emotion is because I don't have the experience that Adam had. I was not in perfect Eden. I couldn't see God face to face. I couldn't see Christ face to face. I couldn't see angels face to face. And then can you imagine him looking at his wife, looking at Christ, looking at the angels that were around us? We're told in Patriarchs and Prophets, the angels were the ones that were educating Adam and Eve. Not only, but definitely. And so, with all the perfection around him, and then his hand having to take the life of an innocent animal. He had just named that animal not too long before. He called it a lamb, right? For him to go through that, I don't understand. But that was him coming closer to Christ. What kind of pain did he have to go through to get closer to Christ? Sometimes, I admit, in my experience, I have said, like coming closer to Christ is like a wonderful thing. It's always roses and there's a nice, beautiful sunrise and you're outside and you got the Bible open, the breeze is coming through, you got a hot drink, right? All this stuff. No, not all the time. Sometimes it's really difficult. And God makes it that way to help us understand the depths of sin. Looking at this again, we have here Genesis 23, verse 21. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothe them. In order to have coats of skin, the animal had to die. It doesn't say that God killed the animal. It says that God, the Lord God, made the coats. Why? Because there's no human devising in the coats that were made by God for humanity. I don't believe he asked Adam and Eve to stitch the coats, because now you have, in the midst of this robe of righteousness, or what symbolized the robe of righteousness, you have the thread of human devising. No. The human kills the lamb. Somehow God weaved it, if you will. Okay? And so I believe that to be true. Maybe if I've misunderstood, you can help me understand differently. And like I said, if you want to interrupt, please do so. Abraham left family and home, then was asked to offer his son. Okay, why? Because he was drawing closer to God. God had to get him out of Ur, right? Ur the Chaldees, you know where that is, right? Later we're described, that's in Babylon. And so coming out of Babylon, he had to leave family, he had to leave home, he had to leave the associations of what he was used to. He felt comfortable there, right? He liked it, probably. But God said, oh, you got to leave. And not only that, he offered up his son. That's incredible. Like, okay, there's a story of not too long ago, probably 4 years ago. I was in my trailer in what was my office at the time. And I don't remember what was happening, but my son, he came up and he was like, Papa. And it was unusual that he would interrupt me in the office. So I came out, opened the door, said, hey, what's up? He looked at me with kind of these eyes like he didn't know what was going on. He said, I might be, what do you call that? I might be drafted. Oh, wow. Almost brings tears to my eyes now. I thought, first thing I said is, would to God that I could go for you. And I was thinking, like, my son, really? You know, like my son could just be taken away like that by the government and put into some potential war. I don't remember the time frame or what was going on, but that was a real discussion being talked about over there in California. And it really struck me. Like that was a big, heavy bunch of news that I received that day, you know. I might go to war. I might be drafted. Well, think about that. What does that look like when you're told by God as Abram to offer up your son? Like, your son's going to die. I want you to do that for me. Could you do that, please? When, Lord? Tomorrow morning. Could you leave? How much could you sleep? No wonder he didn't tell his wife, right? There would have been war in that home. You were going to what? No, you don't understand. God, what? No, really, God told me I'm supposed to do this. So it says, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show you. From your father's house. Okay, I don't know if he grew up there, but I mean, he's associated with his family. Leave your country and from your kindred. Who are the kindred? Yeah, the family, right? Your kin. You're going to leave everything, Abram, because I want you to come nearer to me. That is so difficult to understand. Like, I've done that. I've actually had to go different places in different occasions in my life, in places I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to be gone that long. 6 months in Romania, really, apart from my kids and my wife. It was not the plan originally. They were supposed to come with me, but it didn't work the first time. So I went back hoping it would work again, and it didn't. 6 months away from my kids. That was tough. What about this one here? Genesis 22, verse 11. The angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham. And he said, here am I. And he said, lay not your hand upon the lad. Don't go through with what you were asked to. You're about to, but don't. Neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. What does that mean? That means God had to prove how much Abram loved him. Why? Because he wanted him to be drawn closer to God. You need to understand this relationship. I need you, Abraham, to illustrate something that nobody else can right now. You're the father of faith. You have an only begotten son by promise. And I need you to illustrate something for me. Will you do it? Yes, sir. You know what it's like to lose a son. You've talked about it, and I've seen you cry a number of times. I've never lost a son. But Abraham did, without actually losing him. He, in his mind, said this son is going to die. He was ready to bring the knife down. He actually lost his son in his head to be brought closer to Christ, to be brought closer to God. Sometimes we get put into these weird situations, right? And then what was it like when Abraham got back? Isaac goes running to mom and just drops on her knees, right? Like grabs her by the legs and says, Mom, it's so good to be back. Why? What's going on? Dad was going to kill me. You know? Like, how did that end up? How was breakfast that morning? That'd be really tough to go be brought closer to God. It's amazing to me. I'm going to try to do this the right way. I don't remember. There it is. Well, what about Jacob? He had to wrestle with an angel, but not only that, he limped for the rest of his life. Why? To be brought closer to God. Sometimes we're like, oh, Isaac, man. Jacob. That guy, he really messed up. I mean, God wanted to help him out, but now look at him. Poor guy, he's limping. He should have just listened to God. I mean, he should have just went along with what God was saying, but now look at him. Right? You could have said that, but in all reality, God wanted to show his power. Thank you so much. God wanted to show his power, and that really smells good. That's it's like mint or something. Okay, that's what it is. So, thank you. For Jacob to wrestle with the angel, it was at a point where he actually thought he was going to die. Like, he was wrestling for his life, was he not? And once he realized who he was wrestling with, he wouldn't let go for his life. He said, I will not let you go until you bless me. You know what's interesting about that? In order to become closer to God, he had to search his soul and admit his embarrassment. Here's what I mean. Okay, you want a blessing? I won't let you go until you bless me. Okay, you want a blessing? I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. All right, if you want a blessing, here it is. What's your name? He's like, okay, I get it. It's not Esau. I've got to be honest. I'm Jacob. I'm a deceiver. I admit it. That's me. As a result of getting into that embarrassing experience, admitting he's a deceiver, he's touched on the thigh, he's limping the rest of his life just to draw closer to God, right? What have we been through? And what will we go through? Will God need to illustrate something in your life to be able to help somebody else around you understand what it's like to be drawn closer to God? What it costs? Jacob was left alone, and there he wrestled with a man, wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, and as he wrestled with him. That was for the rest of his life. And in fact, the traditions were that they did something with the hip of the sacrifices, right? As a result of this experience. So, like, this was like, how would you say, monumental. This started a tradition here in the sacrifices that they had. Moses was in the wilderness for how long? 40 years. Why? To get closer to God. He had to unlearn all the stuff that he had gathered from Egypt. This man was literally going to be the king of Egypt. He was a prince. He was trained in military. He was trained in philosophy. He was trained in the Egyptian gods. He was trained in the history. He was trained in fighting. He was trained in all this stuff because he was going to be king one day. And God said, yeah, that's wonderful, but no. You need to go and be a shepherd so you can learn the patience and diligence and meekness and just waiting on the Lord for 40 years to be drawn closer to God. Sometimes we're like, oh man, God isn't using me. What was the last thing you did? Well, I taught Sabbath school last week, but that was it. What, Moses was preaching to the sheep for 40 years and you're upset because you've only been sharing one time and whoever knows how long? I don't know. Oops, we're going to keep that thing shaking back. That's all right. Moses was learning regularly over 40 years. That's a long Bible study, right? A Bible study in nature. Finally, as it says, that Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. What happened there? You remember? There was the burning bush, right? That's where God, after 40 years, finally was able to reveal himself in such a way that Moses was like, hey, that's unusual. I'm going to go look over there. And God said, take the shoes off your feet, for the place you're standing is holy ground. And from that point forward, Moses was now ready. But it took 40 years. That's amazing to me. Naomi went through the loss, through family loss, and she couldn't understand, right? Well, yeah, Naomi. I was seeing the word Ruth, and I thought, whoops, I messed up. There it is. So they too went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was moved about them and said, is this Naomi? And she said unto them, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. Now, what was happening there? Why was Naomi going through such a difficult time, losing everything and now having to go away with somebody named Ruth? What was happening? Her husbands and sons had both died, yes, but what was the bigger plan? What was God doing? Bringing them to Bethlehem so that the son of David, or that the father of David, the grandfather of David and the father of David could be there in that area, and we could continue the line of Judah, right? God needed to do something using even a Moabitess in the picture. Naomi had to leave the area she was so she could nurture, so she could Bible study with, so she could like put her arm around Ruth and guide her to the person who God wanted her to be with. All that trouble was so that they and many other people could be brought closer to God. You see the bigger picture there? It's incredible. I'm sure I'm missing 1,000 things in that story. I wish I knew the book of Ruth better. But some of this stuff is, to me, illustrative of the fact that God, he'll wrestle you if he needs to. He'll put you away in the wilderness if he needs to. He'll fight with you if he needs to. He'll have you kill a lamb, illustrating the death of his son if he needs to. This is radical Christianity. Those people that say, if you follow the Lord, you're going to prosper, they haven't read the Old Testament, right? They haven't even read the New Testament. We're not done yet. So here it says, in the life of Hannah, she was without child. Why? Why was she without child? So that she would end up on her knees at the temple, pleading with God with tears in her eyes. She was being drawn closer to God. But God had a bigger plan. She was going to lead that young man, Samuel, in a way that other parents would not. I said that correctly. And so as a result, God needed her to be so dedicated to him, keeping children from her, so that when she finally got it, that child was dedicated to the one who gave it to her. See all the big picture there? Unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb, and her adversary also provoked her, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord. So she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. There's somebody else who didn't eat. Remember that? To be drawn closer to the Lord. It was Esther, wasn't it? Ezra called for separation of inappropriate relationships. That's radical. This is radical Christianity here in Ezra chapter 10. If you haven't read that recently, go through that story and try to understand the emotions of children, of women, of men. Why? To be drawn closer to God. Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself before the house of God, there assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children, for the people wept very sore. And Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, We have trespassed against our God, we have taken strange wives of the people of the land, yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. Now therefore let us make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives, and such as are born of them, women and children, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law. Arise, for this matter belongeth unto thee. We also will be with thee. Be of good courage, and do it. Yeah, that's a heavy, heavy commitment to be drawn closer to the Lord. I don't understand all the details there. Normally when I'm counseling, I'm saying, hey, we don't want to separate families. We want to draw them together, right? This is tough to understand, but it's true. It happened. God blessed that nation as a result. But think of all the pain, the nights of tears, the fear, the lack of being, how would you say, women like to be as though they're not moving their, what do you call that? I know the term. What is it? Yeah, settled, nested. Yeah, that's the idea. I don't remember the term, but women like that. Secure. They like to feel secure, right? Now Papa's gone. You got the children, and where's Dad? Where's your husband? This kind of stuff was so that God would draw the nation closer to him because they had messed up. Kind of like Adam, like you messed up. You got to do something radical. You've got to kill something to illustrate my son that's going to die. This is as a result of what you did. Esther didn't eat for 3 full days. Or drink, right. Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Esther 4:16. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so I will go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. She was asking a great number of people not to eat for 3 full days, not to drink water for 3 full days. And normally, in a medical setting, you have no water for 3 full days, and what's starting to happen? You're starting to die. This is to the point of death for an entire group of people to draw them closer to God. I think the Bible's becoming more radical the more I read it, So looking at this, Job was emptied of all but life itself. Why? To draw him closer to God, but also to illustrate a larger picture. I've presented this a couple of different times. Job illustrates the 144,000. If you hadn't heard that before, I'll break it down real quick. I don't remember all the details. I've got a whole list of stuff. The God of heaven, let me do it this way here. God of heaven and the angels, the Son of God as well, all of them were hyper-focused in on Job. Let me say it again. They were hyper-focused in on Job and his life. At the end of time, God, his Son, and all the angels will be hyper-focused on the 144,000. Job had all earthly support cut off. He lost his jobs. You know that because he lost his cattle, his oxen, and his sheep. The cattle, the oxen, and the sheep represent 3 different types of businesses he had. It'd be like a moving company, a bulldozer company, and a taxi company, okay? And like clothing, being able to take care of people's clothing. So all these businesses are gone. He has nothing to protect him from the snakes on the field. The grass is going to grow. He's got like different kind of ticks and bugs and stuff around his house now because all of that protection is gone from him. All earthly support is taken away. So like Terminix, no more. He had his family taken away from him. He was separated from family, just like the 144,000 will have all earthly support cut off. Family will be taken away from them. They'll be separated. Even Christ said that in Matthew chapter 10. Mothers will be separated from their children. Children will be separated from their fathers, etc. You have the wife, which is symbolic of the church in a prophetic setting, turning against Job, the remnant, the one that was faithful. And the church is saying, curse God and die. What's wrong with you? And he had to stand up against every single thing that was contrary to him, just like the 144,000. There will be friends that come up to Job and try to say 3 different types of gospels. They all sound really, really good, but they're wrong. One for the Father, one for the Son, and one for the Holy Ghost. I'm just saying that. But you have the 4th person that comes that sounds so good, it's hard to even show that God proves him wrong, but he does. I went through the book of Job verse by verse, and I actually showed that the 4th guy is more like the illustration of the personation of Christ. And it's really hard to tell by his wording. You can only tell by God's wording that this guy is an impersonator or a personator. He's not really the good guy that he's making out to be. He's the one that looks just like the good guy that he's claiming to be. So, looking again at this idea of Job, you have Daniel. He was in the lion's den. Why? To draw him closer to God, but also to illustrate a point, just like we were learning before about the different reasons for persecution. This is one of those for others, right? But Daniel was drawn closer to God. You see, the book of Daniel is laid out in a chronological structure, okay? You have Daniel chapters 1 through 6 illustrating the 3 angels' messages in chronological order. What do I mean? Daniel chapter 1, fear God and give glory to him. Daniel feared God, and in everything he ate, in everything he drank, in whatsoever he did all to the glory of God. So he feared God and give glory to him. Now, chapter 2, the hour of his judgment has come. We know that the king was upset, and he said everybody's head's going to come off, because the king had said the hour of judgment has come. It was during that time that the spirit of prophecy was revealed for God's people, which was Daniel at that case. The next chapter, chapter 3, worship him that made. Don't worship that which man made. So far in the first 3 chapters, fear God and give glory to him. The hour of his judgment has come. Worship him that made. Chapter 4 is the second angel's message. Babylon is fallen. We know that the king was taken off the throne and made a vegan vegetarian for 7 years before he actually had enough in his mind to be able to turn his life back to the Lord. Very good. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, appreciate it. And so what was happening is that you have the king off his throne, and what do you call a kingdom without a king? Well, there's no kingdom at all, right? So in a sense, Babylon is fallen. Now, chapter 5 is fallen the second time because she made all nations drink of the wine. And that's what happens in chapter 5. You have Belshazzar, who says to all his lords, come gather, drink of the vessels that I have, that I took from Nebuchadnezzar in the sanctuary over there in Babylon, and I want you to drink wine from these things. So they praise all the different gods of gold, brass, iron, silver, wood, and stone. Okay? Those things were happening as a result of Babylon being fallen and making all nations drink of the wine. Okay? They were worshiping all kinds of things. The 6th chapter is the 3rd angel's message, including justification by faith in verity. Now, what that means, just summing it up quickly, you have Daniel being the minority. You have the majority who are sounding like they're in unity by saying all the governors of the kingdom have decided that we would like to make laws. But it's not true. They sound like they're unified, but they're not. So therefore, it is a disingenuous or deceptive unity. So the minority wasn't in the majority to make that overriding decision that they said everybody was included in. And so the minority is different in that he has a different spirit than the majority. He is one that was honored by God in that, I won't go into that part, but You have the majority that are driven by a false unity. They want to make laws void of religious liberty. And in these laws, they said, whosoever, that's a worldwide movement. And if you don't follow the dictates of their conscience, you will be persecuted unto death. So there's one man at their head. That's why they said, you, king, have to sign this because you're the one that we're all going to worship for only 30 days. Why 30? Because the final movements will be what? Rapid ones. And so you got the rapid movements, you got the whole world involved, you got the majority against the minority, you got the laws that are void of religious liberty, you've got the laws or the church and state combined, you have the one man at the head representing the religious and civil mover in the world, where he signs the paper, and now you have church and state joined, and everybody's persecuted unto death who doesn't follow the dictates of their conscience. And what do you have? You have Daniel, who is praying. Daniel is studying. You know that from chapter 9 because the chapters are actually moved around. You've got Daniel chapter, they're not in chronological order in that sense is what I mean. You have Daniel praying, you have Daniel studying, and you have Daniel witnessing. You know Daniel's witnessing because the king himself said, Daniel, the God whom you serve continually, was he able to deliver you from the dens of the lions, or the mouths of the lions, right? How did the king know that there was a God that Daniel served continually, which was the specific word relating to the sanctuary service? Because Daniel had been witnessing. So Bible study, prayer, and witnessing. That's what Daniel was doing. The same thing that we're asked to do, which is the holy place experience of the sanctuary, right? And so the reason why it's a different word, by the way, is because it's in a different language in chapter 7. Or rather 6. This is chapter 6. But now what we have here is when Daniel was in the lion's den, he said, my God has, and before you, O king, before my God and before you, innocency has been found in me. Do you remember that? How could Daniel, a man that had sinned, everybody's under sin, we all know that, how could Daniel claim innocency, not just before the king, but before God, the most holy being in the universe? Justification by faith, in the faith of Jesus, right? So Daniel chapter 6 is the third angel's message, including justification by faith in verity, as Ellen White says. And so what we have is in this idea of, there we go, Job had this experience, Daniel had this experience, the three faithful had this experience. Daniel, by the way, as I was saying, was illustrating a bigger picture in his lion's den, but it was also to bring him closer to the Lord so that he could say, innocency was found in me. That's bringing him closer so that he can know justification by faith in the midst and being surrounded by lions. The three faithful Hebrews were in the flames. Why were they in the flames? So they could draw closer to the fourth that was in those flames. So, I mean, all these trials of life in all the history so far of the Bible have led us to the point that it draws us closer to God. So Jonah was thrown into the sea and swallowed by a great fish. Why? So that he could be drawn closer to God. You know, Jonah illustrated Christ, if you didn't know that. Jonah left a Babylonian area. Jonah left the presence of God, because it says he was first in the presence of God, and he left a Babylonian area. And as a result, he ended up with others in a boat, and he ended up asleep, and they woke him up and said, you need to do something or we're going to perish. And so his answer was, if I be lifted up, right? So then he was lifted up and thrown into the sea. Well, when he was in the great fish, it was the same experience as when Christ was on the earth and he said, my soul is exceeding sorrowful even unto death. That great fish illustrated to me, anyways, the sin of the world that was surrounding Christ. Why? Because the sin of the world took Christ way under all the weight of the waters of the world. So Jonah was under the billows, the waves, the sea, the depth, and I don't remember, there's 5 different ways he alludes to the ocean. In other words, there was a lot of it. He didn't just say I was in the ocean. He said I was in the waves, the billows, the sea, the waters, and the I can't remember. But there's another one. You can see it in Jonah chapter 2, verse 3 or 4. There was weeds around Jonah's head. Why was there weeds around his head? Because he was in this experience of being under sin, crushed, so crushed to the point of death, right? Jonah was 3 days in the belly of the fish. Christ was 3 days in the belly of the earth. Jonah came out alive. Jesus came out alive. Everybody who was, I can't even remember the wording, but do you remember what it says there in Jonah chapter 2? 3, the billows, the waves, the sea. The floods, the billows, the waves, the sea, and the deep. There you go, yeah. So Jonah was obviously illustrating Christ. He came up, and as a result of coming up alive out of this experience, just like Jesus did, there was great reformation in Nineveh, just like there was great reformation at the Pentecost. Okay, so the story of Jonah is so incredible to me because Jonah, if you read it just as it reads, he was prejudiced. He was selfish. He didn't understand the omnipresence of God. He turned away from the commandments of God. He wanted to commit suicide. He was like all these other things. Yet he so well represented Christ. It blows my mind. It's like magical in the Bible. I don't understand how it goes. But so Jonah was there. Why? To bring him closer, not only him, but also others to Christ. John the Baptist was alone. And John the Baptist was imprisoned. John the Baptist lost his head. All of that was to, I could say, to get rid of the earthliness. You see, because the John the Baptist is what we're supposed to be at the end of time. And we also, as it says in Revelation chapter 20, we're going to be beheaded. Now, taking that literally for everybody, I don't think so. But it's going to be a reality. I mean, we see that this is happening even in the world today where in some settings, Christians are being beheaded. And so you have this situation where John the Baptist was alone, imprisoned. Why? It was to get rid of all that stuff, that doubt, that earthliness. He even said, can you ask Jesus, is he the one that we're waiting for, or should we wait for another? It's like, bro, you saw the heavens opened and the glory of God, the light and glory of God come down in the form of a dove, and you heard that voice say, this is my beloved son. In fact, John chapter 1, verse 42, 43, somewhere around there, John says that I bear witness that this is the Son of God, that he is the Son of God. Yeah, but also he heard the voice. This is he. And so when he bear record, when he bear witness, he as a prophet was saying in front of everybody, I am bearing witness. I'm bearing record. This is the Son of God. And then now he's doubting it. Why? Because he needed to get rid of all that stuff. That's why God allowed him to be there. It was to draw him closer to God. It's fascinating to me. So now there, Paul was blind for 3 days. Why? We all know the answer. Because he needed to be drawn closer to God. He was persecuting Christ, wasn't he? He was the one that was saying to, who was it? When Stephen was stoned, he was the one saying, I'll take your coats, I'll hold it, go ahead, do your thing. And so they did their thing, they killed him, and he was one of the accomplices, I guess is what they call it, right? Yes, sir. He needed to become converted and born again, and that's why God blinded him with that amazing vision that he saw of Christ saying, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? All of that was to draw him closer to God. I think it's fascinating. So Peter denied and was ashamed before he could confess, right? All of that was to bring him to the point where he would come closer to God. John was exiled to the island of Patmos. Jesus himself was in the wilderness fasting for 40 days and was crucified. Why? To bring him and all of us as well to God. Amen? So when I was preparing for this, it was kind of a shock for me. Like, really, God, you want me to talk about all this stuff? Well, yeah, this is how God has illustrated in the Bible that a lot of people came closer to God. Sometimes we wonder, why are there so many trials? Well, think about it from that perspective. You're just like everybody else. You think my life is easy? It's not. You see me behind the camera a lot of times, and I can tell good stories and I share the Bible. I don't tell you about all my trials, but it's not easy. There are times where it's like, I'm ready to give up, like I want to be done. Yes, sir. That's right. It is to build all the characteristics of Christ in us, to help us to produce good fruit, right? I know you guys go through trials. There's nobody in here that doesn't. Every one of us has different kinds of trials, and so we're all together in this. Yes, sir.
We should be concerned when we don't have any.
Right. We should be concerned when there are no trials, because then we know that there's something coming.
So they were like God.
Yeah. I think it was a bumper sticker the other day. It said, "No, I'm not in a valley. I'm between mountain tops." I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I like that too. That was good. So sometimes we just have to, as it says, when you're going through hell, keep going.
That's right. Don't stop.
Yeah, because like you're going through it, right? So sometimes you're in the midst and you're like, man, it's too hot in here. There's air conditioning on the other side. Just keep on going. And sometimes we have to just keep pressing on, knowing that this is the lot that God has given us on this planet. It won't be like this forever. One of these days, we're going to sit on the throne of God. Do you know the Bible says that? Do you know that there's going to be three representatives on the throne? The Father, the Son, and the overcomers. That's amazing. So who will be the third person? Right? It's amazing to me how we have the honor, the absolute astounding thoughts to look forward to be part of the council of heaven. Like if you're not on the throne, you're not leading the councils, right? We're going to be on the throne as overcomers. That's what the Bible says. That means we're going to be in the councils. I don't understand that. That's the whole thing Satan got upset about. He couldn't be in the councils. Yes. To vindicate God's character through our own, right? Yeah. Yeah, let me show it to you. Now I can do it this way. Here, there you go. I'll just bring it up to you. Revelation chapter 3, verse 21. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am sat down with my Father in his throne. So it's like, where are you going to be? You're going to be on the throne. That's amazing. This is to the Laodicean church. The church where it's described Christ is on the outside. I praise God for trials. They're not fun, but that's what brings us closer to him. It helps shave off some of those things that we don't want in our characters, and we're grateful. So sometimes when you don't want to smile, you just got to smile and say, Lord, let's do this. Let's do it one more day. Yeah, it is. Shall we pray? Our Father, I want to thank you that you've given us the opportunity to be able to understand a little bit more about what it is that you're saying to your people. Your word is powerful. Your word has given us a demonstration today of sometimes it's not easy for your people. It wasn't easy for your son, and it certainly wasn't easy for you. When you knew, when they sinned, you had those counsels, and it was difficult for you to give up your son. 3 times we know he came in and out of your presence, and you committed your son for us. Thank you. In the name of your son, amen.